I haven't even finished day one with the new ARM-powered Surface laptop, and I already have a lot of thoughts. This episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by viewers like you. All the folks who share content like this on social media and the incredible generosity of the folks on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. More on those awesome nerds later in the video. It's been a roller coaster ride, but we're here. And I'm sleep deprived. This is gonna be kind of a rough video. I haven't even set up a desk to shoot good B-roll. I'm holding the laptop right here. After my bank tried to sabotage my pre-order, I have to send a huge thank you to the order fulfillment team at Microsoft for keeping my pre-order and getting this shipped out fast. Because this isn't a review unit. You see, neither Microsoft nor Qualcomm sent this for me to share my thoughts. I worked with my patrons on setting up a budget for the year, and I'm reviewing fewer phones this year to cover the most expensive configuration Surface laptop currently being sold. This is the 64 gigabytes of RAM model, and I wanted to see how this would compare against the demo laptops I got to test down at Qualcomm's campus in San Diego, all of which also had 64 gigabytes of RAM. It's a $2,500 system that I'm not sure many people should really opt for. But in addition to my own work needs, I also wanted a good system to do things like demonstrate software and shoot tutorials. I needed a good hero product for those other kinds of videos. Enough backstory, let's jump in. The unboxing process was simple and very well considered. A minimalist approach to the packaging, and with those little accessibility concerns that Microsoft has been really good considering of late. Pull tabs to unseal the box, a simple paper sleeve that also doubles as a handle to lift the system out of the box. Very nice. Very clean. And then we have this beauty in black alongside a 65-watt charger, which is nuts for me when we talk about performance later in this video. I like Surface design. It's a sleek system. It's not the thinnest nor the lightest, but it's just really clean. We get a fantastic backlit keyboard. The keys have good tactile feedback, and they're pretty quiet. Now, I know I keep rambling. I still think my Pixelbook Go keys are probably my all-time favorite laptop keys. This is pretty close. For all the space on the 15-inch, I would have liked just a little bit more room on the trackpad, but it's that satiny smooth surface with adjustable click sensitivity and the haptics built in. It's one of the better trackpads or touchpads you can find in Windows land, and I just love that Windows laptops, we don't actually have to click the pad. I've just gotten used to touch taps for all these controls. The port selection is pretty lean though. I love the overall design, but you have to do a lot to augment it. One USB-A port, two Thunderbolt 4, a headphone jack, a magnetic charger port, and a micro SD card slot. My experiment is to see if I can use this to largely replace the massive, huge, aging workstation that's under my desk. That means I'll need a bunch of hubs and adapters. I had to grab a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapter, and I'm looking for other hubs so I don't have multiple dongles sticking out of my laptop. The screen is really pretty, and it's not an OLED. I would have preferred that, but it's a nice LCD. And the thing I'm a bit more spoiled by is supporting 120 Hz refresh. It is a touchscreen, but I'm also happy that I have another system in-house that will hopefully support the Surface Pen with some updates. I still have the older pen from my first Duo. This is the pen I used with my Duo 2. The Surface will recognize when you take it out of the caddy, but right now it doesn't seem to have any interaction, so I've got to dig into the software and settings. Maybe this needs an update. Certainly not as handy as using a pen on a tablet, but there are still a few times I would like to have the precision of some kind of pencil-like thing on my laptop screen. I haven't run any other screen or speaker tests yet. Those will have to come in a follow-up review. Just for a first impression though, it's a very nice multimedia experience. So I start setting it up, and this is very different than how Windows has behaved while I've been working on the mini PC reviews that I've been doing recently. It starts out with the same region and Wi-Fi settings. We name the laptop, and then I get a reboot. When the laptop comes back up, I get a screen I've never seen before looking for updates. And it seems like it's really downloading a lot of stuff. Kind of a pet peeve of mine how Windows looks for updates at startup, and then when you actually get into the OS, you still have to do another 2 or 3 rounds of updates and reboots to really get up to date. Now, I'm hopeful that maybe this is improved. This part takes a really long time to chew through, and there are these panels showing you all of the new AI stuff you can play with. I put in my Microsoft account and I set up my Windows Hello face scan. That's working crazy fast these days. And after clicking through the privacy settings, there's a coming soon page for recall. That's been one of the hot button topics of late, and Microsoft was correct to pull it from this launch. We'll have to see if the security can be shored up in a future update. We know it will eventually arrive. Depending on what that looks like, I still might need to shoot a how to disable Windows recall video. We're wrapping up the rest of the setup process and pairing with my phone, and then we're into the OS. We're into a clean, new Windows laptop, very little pre-installed bloat to scrub out. I don't use Spotify, I don't play Microsoft Solitaire, it's just little things like that. The rest of it, it's pretty empty. I'm all excited, so I go to settings to see if it really did update everything, and no, it did not. You still need to run Windows Update 2 more times and 1 more reboot, but then you're still not really done. You should also go into the Microsoft Store and run all of those app updates too. There are a lot of Microsoft core system pieces that now get updated like apps. They're in the store. I totally get why we update software separate from the operating system, but it would be nice to find a way to streamline this. How many of your family and friends do you think have never updated the apps in the store? I mean, at least they get nagged by Windows to update the bigger chunks of the OS. And of course, because I'm really using the system and I put in my Microsoft account, it tries to find files from OneDrive and it starts littering my desktop from a test system I used years ago, and I literally have no idea how to stop it. I've tried so many times to reconfigure my OneDrive settings, but I get a bunch of folders in my documents and a bunch of links to files on my desktop. This is more a reviewer problem and not something you're gonna run into when you just get to live with your gadgets, but I've taken to just uninstalling OneDrive, even though I do use it as my primary cloud storage solution. I just use it through a browser. The nice thing is, I've been plugged in the whole time I've been setting it up, so I have a full battery ready to start some basic testing. Why not see how far through my setup and my app installations and some of my benchmarks, how far can I get on battery power? I don't run laboratory grade benchmarks, but there are a couple things I like to compare just to see how systems perform, and a lot of software I need to use on the regular. Can the new Surface at least handle all the installs? Maybe some Geekbench testing. It can, and it did. All on battery. I threw on Firefox, GIMP, Chrome, VLC, the full suite of Microsoft 365 apps in Outlook, DaVinci Resolve 19, Geekbench, WinRAR, and then in Steam, I downloaded and installed Tetris Effect, RoboCop Control, and Hellblade. Logging in to all of my web services and email and social media. While this is all setting up, I'm even replying to messages and social media and email, and I had plenty of room on the battery to start running my tests. The Geekbench scores are encouraging. This is one of the more powerful mobile CPUs you can get today. And on this 12-core design, there are no dedicated efficiency cores. Not like the Core Ultra 7's tetra core configuration. On battery, the CPU is pulling better results than an Intel machine plugged in. And plugging in the laptop just to run one more bench, it didn't seem to change scores significantly. I think we're just in the margin of error territory on Geekbench. The GPU scores are a little weak for this price tier, falling behind last generation AMD Radeon integrated graphics. I think Qualcomm likely had Intel Iris in their sights, and we certainly see this outpacing 12th and 13th gen Core i9s with iGPUs, but now Intel Arc graphics have leapfrogged this, and AMD has been ahead of this for 2 years now. Getting into some actual real-world app testing, none of this is conclusive. Literally everything we do today is going to be obsolete data probably in 48 hours. More and more Windows software is jumping on ARM support, and the stuff that is compiled for ARM still might not be optimized for this specific chip. Considering the recent big performance improvements we just got on older Windows on ARM systems, I have pretty healthy expectations that performance will continue to improve in the near term as software is better optimized. But we got to start somewhere. For example, WinRAR. Those scores are terrible. AMD crushes in tests like these, but X Elite is significantly behind the Core Ultra 7 here. Not a great start, especially as RAR tends to favor chips with a ton of multitasking performance cores. The penalty for emulating x86. Still a significant uplift over the last generation of ARM chips for Windows, but still not great. Browser scores are looking really good on Edge and Chrome. Beautiful performance there. And we saw scores in keeping with the test units that I got to play with down in San Diego. And now we can also finally run the updated browser bench, and scores here are looking good. This is one of the bigger differences between x86 and ARM. The X Elite here is posting higher scores on battery than on an Intel system plugged in. And when you compare the Intel system unplugged, that gap is enormous. Users have to know to go into settings and adjust performance options, but that's not a great solution when that's going to drain your battery even faster. Another way to demonstrate this, the Intel system running a short browser test plugged in sounded like this. And the Surface running that test, also plugged in, sounded like this. If you can find an outlet and you don't mind the fan noise, an Intel system delivers great performance for price. ARM is delivering a better performance per watt. And then I had to move on to DaVinci. I just couldn't wait any longer. My favorite video editing software is finally ARM compatible on Windows, except it currently can't use the GPU to render. I always run this test as a combo, a CPU render and a GPU render, and there is not an option to specify the GPU. It's native rendering or auto, and the auto scores are worse than the native scores. I gotta be honest, even though DaVinci's in beta, and I know that this will probably improve, this sucked some of the wind out of my sails. I run a little 1-minute test that I've tried to duplicate frame for frame from my phone performance reviews to show comparable output between different platforms and different apps. Take 6 4K clips from a mirrorless camera with transitions, a watermark, and a soundtrack. We render that out at a good bitrate for YouTube, still at 4K quality. My old workstation, I just recently upgraded that with a 4070 Ti, and it can finish this render now in 16 seconds. And hilariously, the MediaTek chip in my Vivo X100 Pro also finishes this render just slightly over 16 seconds for similar video quality in LumaFusion. CPU rendering on laptops cannot catch a premium phone with well-optimized software. Now, the good news is, comparably, X Elite is doing really well against other CPU renders. The Core Ultra 7 finishes this project in 70 seconds plugged in. The AMD 8945HS in a mini PC finishes this in 55 seconds. The X Elite unplugged finished in 41 seconds. To compare, the CPU render on the X Elite is about 18% slower than the GPU rendering speed of the Core Ultra 7 with the new Arc graphics. 18% sounds like a lot, it kinda is, but real world, that works out to a difference of about 7 seconds in rendering a video for shorts or reels or TikToks. I am desperate to see if DaVinci will better support the Adreno GPU as a way to render. We have to wait and see. At present, I don't think I can quite replace my workstation with this laptop yet. I don't really need to beat my workstation, I just need to get a little closer to that kind of performance, because then I'll be using a computer with a 65-watt charger instead of a massive server chassis with a 1200-watt power supply just in time for the hottest summer months. Moving on, I totally did a little gaming too. Qualcomm was correct not positioning this as a gaming solution, but X Elite can play some games, and it plays games pretty well. I always start with Tetris Effect, and we're right on the knife edge here. Full resolution on the Surface screen, and with medium graphics settings, we stay close to 60 frames per second, and that's not okay. You cannot have frame drops in Tetris. I'm impressed that we got this close, but I'd have to turn some stuff down just to make sure we stay locked at 60 FPS. Late stage Tetris is impossible if you start having tiny little frame rate shifts. And then it was on to Control, and like the demo we saw at Qualcomm's campus, 1080p resolution, medium graphic settings, no ray tracing, and walking around, the X Elite stayed consistently above 40 FPS. We saw dips into the low 30s when throwing around a lot of debris, and more aggressive effects inched us down into the high 20s, but I think with some slight adjustments to the graphic settings, we should easily be able to keep gameplay above 30 frames per second. The Windows screen recorder totally fumbled my capture here, but it at least kept the frame rate ticker up in the corner. Knowing this GPU isn't as powerful as AMD or Intel's, I was very impressed with Hellblade. Full resolution, high graphics, high ray tracing, and walking around the intro section, even with some of the distance drawing, we never dropped below 20 FPS. That's still totally unplayable, especially when you get into combat and puzzles, but it's better unplayable than the last generation of AMD and Intel iGPUs. It's another example of how benchmark scores don't tell us everything. Plus, we can fire up FSR, and then we keep a more consistent frame rate around 30 frames per second. This is very encouraging. Obviously, we've moved on since the original Hellblade, but it's not exactly a light game, even today. The issue for gamers will be the full collection of DirectX support and newer engines like Unreal. Just like my 12th gen Intel Mini PC, RoboCop refuses to load past the Intel Arc graphics screen. I don't know if Adreno will ever be able to fully support UE5. So this is one of the more serious wait-and-see issues for folks who might want to game a little higher on an X Elite system. When a game does work, it's better performance than on my Steam Deck. So I know there's a lot of potential in this hardware, and we have to see how developers are going to work to support this different GPU. And lastly, I still have so much work to do coming up with a good test for AI features and NPU performance. I do not care about benchmark numbers. I want to show a practical solution what AI might look like. I'm so tired of the hype. I want to see things it can really do that will improve our daily existence. From the Robo and Kala tablet to the NPUs on AMD and Intel machines, now to X Elite, things like the generative fill eraser tool, it gets a tiny bit faster again. And we get some new style prompts, which are cute, but I don't know how useful they're going to be. Telling my laptop to make this flower look more like a painting, it kind of can't do it, but it does it really quickly. And I can't even conceptualize those performance differences for you though, as the Intel and AMD machines that I have don't have that feature yet at the time I shot this video. One of the more practical demonstrations, I'll be digging more into the DaVinci Resolve NPU tools, and that should give us a better look at what the hardware differences might look like. I still have a lot of other games to play, emulators to check out, and keeping a closer eye on the battery for longer play sessions, but out of the box, this is pretty great because I did all of this minus 3 of my 6 Geekbench runs and 2 of my 4 DaVinci render tests, all on the battery. All the installing, logging in, and most of the gaming and benchmarking took me from a fully charged battery to about 60% battery over 2 hours of screen on time. Running a simpler media streaming test, watching a 1080p video over Wi-Fi for an hour with the screen set to around 200 lux drained about 7% of the battery, which is pretty good. I don't doubt that this should be a system capable of running over 13 hours of constant media streaming, and those numbers will probably improve a little if you store your video files locally instead of streaming them. For this level of performance, hanging really well against top-of-the-line AMD and Intel laptops, I can also charge this thing on a fast phone charger. If you're rocking a Core i9 in your system, you can't always count on an airplane plug to charge your laptop while you're using it. Hilariously, I tried using an older Microsoft charger from my Surface Laptop Go 2, and I got a warning that it was too slow. It still charged, but it might not have been able to outpace the power draw of this system at full load. But an older OnePlus Warp charger on the USB-C, a charger that only puts out 45-watt power delivery, I just got a charging icon. No warnings about the charger being too slow. There is no 9 series Intel or AMD CPU managing that level of performance on a 45-watt charger, let alone completely on battery. I'm really excited about that, but the issue now is, we gotta pay for this performance. Surface Laptop 7, CoPilot Plus, Windows on ARM, X Elite, and the 64GB of RAM option. I don't recommend this specific purchase for many folks out there. $2,500 is a lot, even for all the things it does amazingly well. You have to know deep in your bones that this is the configuration you want and that this is the quantity of RAM you need. I'm doing this in part as a reviewer above my own practical needs. And even stepping down to a 30GB system, a Surface is pricey. Plus, if you're really not all that hot on the AI stuff, then 16GB of RAM is going to be good for the near and medium term future. And that's where there are all these panic sales happening on current gen Intel and AMD systems. Maybe my X Elite can outpace a Core Ultra 7 in CPU tasks. That's gonna lose some GPU comparisons, but I can shop an Intel system with 32GB of RAM that will cost hundreds less. A 16GB system should land for less than half this price. And even in CoPilot Plus land, other X Elite systems, ASUS had a killer deal on their laptop at Costco, 32GB of RAM, an OLED, and a couple extra ports for more than $1,000 less than what I spent here. I really like Microsoft design, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy going for the overkill configuration when I get the chance. But shopping around, it's kind of impractical for the vast majority of folks, even those who want a high-performance portable PC. But what I've been saying for a while, what is not hype, the Windows on ARM revolution is finally here. I took a lot of hits. I was a punching bag on this topic because I was years too early in predicting it, but we finally have it. And I really need you to side-eye some of the techies acting like it's just now. Honestly, we've had compute power on ARM that was ridiculous overkill for most phone tasks. That's been true for 5 or 6 years now. We had all this raw power go completely untapped and end up in landfills. The ability to crunch information has been with us for a long while now. And even today, I just showed a phone that's roughly as powerful as a 12th generation Core i7 U-series CPU. And not only do we have the performance, we can get this performance at like 12 watts. It's a phone! So we needed techies to put more pressure on manufacturers and developers to take this performance seriously. Instead, we had years of techies knuckle dragging their way over to their keyboards to complain about how it's not good enough yet, it's not perfect for me, and it doesn't support my legacy app. We could have been here earlier, and Apple totally beat us to the punch. But I'm glad we're finally here now. So this video, this is one I had to fire off quickly, but moving forward, as I dig more into what this beauty can do, the first folks who will get to hear about those tests and results are my awesome patrons, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. I greatly appreciate everyone who helps support channels like these, sharing videos on social media, and if you have the means, I hope you'll consider checking out the community. We've got tiers for early access to videos, 4K videos, behind the scenes, a private Discord. And you might have noticed over the last couple months, I'm just not as active in the comments on YouTube as YouTube keeps messing with how the comments work. I'd much rather answer questions and get into those chats in a place that won't mess with our comments like that. So once again, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. A huge thank you to the crew there, as I would literally not be able to bring you this content, these videos and reviews, without their generosity. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy. Basically everywhere, but these days I'm spending more of my time on Patreon and on the Mastodons, and way less so on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and definitely not on the Twitters. And I will catch you all on all of the follow-up videos we're about to jump into. Now, if Microsoft wants to tout the AI, let's go all the way and really do some AI.